Coming up, it's World Space Week. We're talking to a Navajo woman who has worked at NASA for more than 18 years. We'll shine a light on her work. Plus, advocating for missing relatives. Families of Native people who have gone missing take to the streets of Albuquerque. We'll tell you about these unsolved cases. I'm Patty Thalohungva. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from Indian country today.
The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is a proud supporter of Indian Country Today. Students at Cronkite News and Gaylord College at the University of Oklahoma cover Indigenous communities together. This important work is distributed by more than 100 news organizations. This collaboration provides a much-needed boost to coverage of Native American communities nationwide. Learn more at cronkitenews.azpbs.org.
This is Indian Country Today.
Esquili, yes, thank you for joining us. I'm Patty Thalohungva. In Alaska, cases of COVID keep going up, so one hospital is bringing in help from as far away as Boston. The state had more than 1,000 new cases and one death reported last Friday. The Alaska Native Medical Center leadership voted last Thursday to move into a crisis standard of care, as reported by the Anchorage Daily News. Healthcare workers like nurses and respiratory therapists from different states began arriving in Alaska this week to help out. They're arriving at a critical time because Alaska's case rate is one of the highest in the country, and the number of patients hospitalized with the virus is at a near record level. This is straining the hospitals there. At the Alaska Native Medical Center, the director, Dr. Bob Anders, says they're being proactive so they can continue to maintain high levels of health care. And that hospital has requested a state-owned medical morgue. It's on standby at this point. About 66% of Alaskans 12 years and older have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Tribal nations in Wisconsin are seeking a court order to stop the November wolf hunt. 6 Ojibwe nations are against the state's planned hunt, claiming it violates their treaty rights. The Wisconsin Natural Resource Board approved a quota of 300 wolves, ignoring the recommendations of its own Department of Natural Resources. One of the managing attorneys on the case is Gussie Lord, who is Oneida. She says she sees a big disconnect between the state and what the tribal nations want.
What the state decision makers believe is important and what the Ojibwe believe is important. Some things that I've heard our clients say are, if we take from these resources, it's important to give back. If it's not the right time to hunt, we don't hunt. If we know that one species is having a negative effect on the ecosystem, whether it's not enough of that species or too many of that species, we sit back and determine what kind of actions we should take before we go and impact the species with a hunt.
This motion is part of the tribe's lawsuit, which was filed at the end of September. Under a new California law, cultural ceremonies are now excused absences from school for Native American students. Before the law, Native families were penalized if their children missed school days to participate in cultural events. And in some instances, students were not able to make up missed work or tests. Shasta County's Education Office started the conversation about protecting students' rights to participate in Native traditions. In the county, 4% of the student population is American Indian, and 30% of those students have been marked absent by school districts when they've been away for ceremonies. Along with the law, lesson plans to teach the history and culture of the tribes in the region are also being created. A new documentary about Buffy Sainte-Marie is in production. She is the first and only Indigenous person to win an Academy Award for her hit song, Up Where We Belong. It was in the 1982 movie An Officer and a Gentleman. She won a BAFTA, Golden Globe, and Oscar for that hit song. The title of the documentary about her is called Buffy Sainte-Marie, Carry It On. It features an in-depth look at her life as an activist and musician. Buffy Sainte-Marie is also the singer for our theme song that you hear at the opening of our newscast. The documentary is expected to be released in a year. Well, Comedy Central is releasing a public service announcement for fans of sports teams that have recently done away with Native American mascots. Written and directed by Joey Clift, the video is full of fun tips for fans to do to cope when a team changes its name. Clift says the short film came about after he took over the Comedy Network's social media to promote a list of 25 Native American comedians. They liked his work so much, the executives at the network asked him to pitch more projects. Along with Indigenous cartoonist Maria Bauer, the film sports an all-Native cast that includes Janice Minding from Rutherford Falls and Reservation Dogs.
This is like the spiritual sequel to my animated short, telling people you're Native American. When you're not Native is a lot like telling a bear you're a bear when you're not a bear, which once again has a name that's way too long. And it's we had the animator from that, David Kantowitz, animated. We also had an all-Native voice cast, the great Janice Schmieding from Rutherford Falls, Tyler Clare from Rutherford Falls, John Timothy from Street Rangers. I star in it.
You can see the whole short film on Comedy Central's YouTube page. And those are the headlines for Indian Country Today. I'm Patty Thalahungva. Coming up, Pepita Redhair has been missing for more than a year, and her loved ones are not letting up on their efforts to find her. We'll take you to a rally they held this past weekend.
Plus, Out of This World, this year's World Space Week celebrates women in space. We meet a Native woman who helped contribute to a major mission. We'll be right back. The World Space Association is celebrating Space Week. Its theme is Women in Space. We're joined now by Raquel Redhouse, who has worked at NASA for 18 years. She's held several titles over her time working at the nation's leading organization for space exploration. Great to see you, Raquel.
Hi, how are you?
Raquel, tell us what got you interested in working in space and at a place like NASA.
You know, I moved a lot as a child, and so TV and the news, I didn't pay too much attention to, so until the movies came, right? So I'd sit there and dream that I'd be helping NASA someday get more explorers, whether that be engineers, scientists, engineers, up into space to find life out possible life out in space, to find but we don't know. So it's the unknown that I really enjoy.
Tell us about what you do at NASA.
I manage the community of practice webinar series that we have, and that entails finding speakers to talk about the new latest and greatest technology or the lessons learned from some missions, whether successful or not. And I also manage the software design tools. And there I find open source software tools that engineers, scientists, or researchers can use to achieve their science in space.
So it sounds like you help these scientists and engineers find the latest information about sending satellites to space. Is that right?
Yes, yes. We make the space missions possible for all of these small satellites, that, AKA CubeSats, to go into space. So I work with great engineers for the most part. I forgot to say that we have a rover that will be going to the moon on the Artemis mission. It's called the Viper mission. It's going to be one of the first rovers to first of all have a headlight. I guess that was a big thing. Then everybody was like, this is the first rover that's going to have a headlight. But it's going to help get lunar science is going to help exploration and trying to find a sustainable location. So it's going to map out the moon and look for water concentrations and has helped the mission in that way.
And before this job, you worked, of course, at the Glenn Research Center. What kinds of projects did you work on there?
I worked on, for most of my career, I worked on what everyone probably knows now as the Artemis mission. It's the next mission to take the first woman into the moon and the next man to the moon. It's been a few years since that's happened. And I worked mostly in the propulsion system portion of the Orion spacecraft. The propulsion system mainly is in the service module portion of the Orion spacecraft, and I worked and analyzed the thermal systems just to make sure that the propulsion system wouldn't overheat or freeze while in space.
Could you give us a timeline on when they're planning to send this spacecraft to the moon, and to maybe tell us in very plain English exactly what your job was in making sure that this is a safe mission?
Okay, so for Artemis 1, that launch is at this time, very early 2022, so January, February timeframe. And then Artemis 2 is the one that will have the crew, and that is projected to be 2024. This service module allows the crew and the crew module to get into space and then to maneuver around and onto the moon.
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about, if you'll actually be there to watch this spacecraft be launched. Is that something that you're planning to attend? I know those look really fun.
Oh, yes, very much so. I plan on being there. I helped analyze the OMS, the orbital maneuver system of the shuttle, the engine, the huge engine. At the time, I did a trade study and to find out if that shuttle engine would be able to help in this Artemis mission way back in 2007 or so. And lo and behold, this trade study became a reality. So now it is going to be used in the Orion mission or the Artemis mission to take our crew to space.
But even longer term, isn't the goal to be able to one day send humans to Mars? And I think what I read was that humans will go to the moon first and then go to Mars after that. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, and that is another mission, the Gateway mission. That will be enabling, this will be after we get on the moon maybe and sustain and be able to live there on the moon. But then the Mars will be then soon sought after, I guess. It's going to be, like I said, the Gateway mission.
Could you tell us a little bit about maybe what it feels like for you to wake up and do this work every day, knowing that you're contributing to something that maybe, we might not see in our lifetimes, but something that our children's children could see one day?
That's part of my passion, is to share my experiences. And with this platform that I have, to encourage the next generation of students, hopefully more Native American students, and engineers, scientists, and researchers.
Aaron Yazzie is a face that we know and love in Indian country. He's a Navajo engineer at NASA who helped send the Perseverance rover to Mars. And I understand you have a special connection to Aaron. Tell us about that.
Yes, Aaron, I love him. He had interned one summer at Glenn Research Center, and we have a Native American advisory group there where we take in basically the students who come from across the country, or, and there's certain circumstances like it's their first time flying or they never left the reservation. And so we help them to feel not alone when they're away from home. So I was one of the mentors for Erin.
And I love this idea of sort of recruiting the next generation of natives at NASA. We, of course, have a pretty good blueprint with people like John Harrington. What does that look like for you in terms of recruiting those native students? Do you speak at conferences? Do you speak to classrooms? How does that play out for you?
Fortunately, NASA has an outreach and recruitment efforts that happen. And so I take advantage of that. I go to the American Indian Science and Engineering National Conference, since it is the largest conference where Native American engineers, scientists, researchers, and more attend. So I go there every year, and there's a NASA career booth. I ask students to come up and encourage them to work for NASA, just like I thought I did it, but I am here. So if I did it, they could do it too. Outreach, I do that also a lot, going back recently back to the Navajo Reservation and put on STEM related activities for them. So hopefully they can be the next Native American astronaut after John.
Growing up, did you ever think you'd work at a place like NASA?
No, never. I admired all of when NASA's been in any of the movies, there's always one specialist that comes in and saves the day, right? So I never thought that I could work for NASA. It just sort of happened, and I'm so grateful that I did, because this space is also another passion of mine.
And to have worked there for 18 years, I imagine, is the cherry on top.
Oh, yes, for sure. Very, very much so.
We only have a little bit of time left, but for the people who maybe are watching this or hearing this and they're meeting you for the first time, what takeaway do you have for Native communities who maybe are interested in space, or maybe for young children who look at you and Erin and all of the other natives at NASA and say, I want to do that someday?
I would say it's very, very possible. Just take that a step, that you have all these opportunities that I found out that they have. I thought I was going to be the person to come and bring all these opportunities, but there are a lot. Education and the STEM efforts have increased, and they are more informed these days. But I mainly go in to inspire and encourage them, help them apply to internships, ways to get in, little secrets maybe to get into NASA. And I want to help them, so I give them my card and help them to get into the internship at least.
Well, Raquel Redhouse will be calling you again when the Artemis 1 mission launches into space, of course. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, a rally in Albuquerque, New Mexico sheds light on the stories of missing Indigenous women. We'll be right back. Sean Griswold is a reporter at Source New Mexico. It is a newly established nonprofit news organization based out of Albuquerque. He is a citizen of Laguna Pueblo, and he joins us now to share more about a rally bringing awareness to the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Hi, Sean.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Give our viewers a sense of what the rally was like on Sunday.
Sunday's rally was an awareness event organized by two young Diné women, and it brought together a lot of families. It started middle of the afternoon. What was interesting is that it started in Old Town Albuquerque, and they met at the park just right outside of the main square plaza. Several hundred people attended, and then they marched from the park around the plaza area. And what was significant about that is that it was the first weekend of the Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta. And so you had people from all across the country, the world, who were just watching this march of people holding signs with the names of their loved ones who are missing or murdered, demanding justice, demanding answers. I was listening to some of you saw a lot of support in the crowd, but I was also looking at some people that were just a little bit bemused or wondering what this was all about. And then some people even recognized one of the names of the women that was referenced in a news article a couple days before, and you could hear people in the crowd say, "Oh, that's what I saw on the news." And so they presented this to an audience of people who are outside of these issues, who may not even be aware of these issues. And then after the march, we went back to the park, and that's when families spoke about their loved ones who are missing or murdered.
One of the families, of course, who shared about their relatives was Pepita Redhair. Can you tell us, who is she and what is her story?
Yes, Pepita Redhair is a woman originally from Crown Point, New Mexico. That's where all of her family is at. She's been missing since March of 2020. She was last seen at the house that she lived at with her boyfriend here in Albuquerque. The timing of all of this circumstances really hit at the beginning of the onset of the pandemic. And so her family was told by police that COVID protocols restricted them from initiating search warrants or arresting anybody that they suspected. You know, the main suspect the family is looking at is the boyfriend, because that was the last person to see her. That was also somebody that put Pepita in the hospital the weekend before she went missing. She suffered some head contusions and was hospitalized several days before she went missing. And so the family really wants to question the boyfriend and is wondering why police haven't questioned the boyfriend. And, you know, throughout the pandemic and even up to this day, her family is big, they're large. That's one thing that was really present about all of the several families who had representatives or who were there to represent a missing or murdered person, was that their families are big. And we all know that we all have large families. And so they really did push, whether it was like taking to the streets by posting flyers or getting connected with the MMIW task force here in New Mexico. They really haven't given up, and they don't plan to give up to find Pepita.
And I understand there's been new developments in her case since the rally on Sunday.
Yes, so the Bernalillo County District Attorney represents and covers prosecutes cases all across Albuquerque, the largest prosecution office in the state of New Mexico. His name is Raul Torres, and he mentioned that he has started a new cold case unit that is looking to focus on MMIW cases in New Mexico. And Pepita's is the first case that's part of this cold case unit.
Pepita Redhair's case was really the face of this rally, but you said that there's other relatives of other victims who have gone missing or been murdered. Tell us about those, maybe particularly about Shauna Toya.
Yes, so Shauna Toya, she is a person who was killed. She died July 31st of 2021 this year. She was found dead in a park here in Albuquerque. Her family said that she was on her way to do laundry and pay rent. Now, this is the end of the month, and so she had $800 cash to go get a money order, is what her family said. But they never heard from her after she left. And when police found her, the money was stolen, the laundry wasn't there, And they also found, like, surprisingly, an ID and a purse from another individual that nobody knew. So her family suspects foul play. Police told family that she died of an overdose. But what happened in this case is, unfortunately, the Office of the Medical Investigator never conducted a complete forensic and autopsy of Shauna's body. So they don't actually know, they don't have a toxicology report to determine exactly how many, or to determine if she had drugs in her system. Her family contends against this allegation from police. They have no reason to believe that she was ever a substance user. She was a mother of 4. She was active. Another thing that was strange is police told family that she was also homeless, which to them was surprising because they knew she had a home. I mean, she was on her way to pay rent. And that kind of led to this overall theme that you heard from several families, that police just are treating Native American in these cases and treating Native Americans with a form of discrimination. And that was something that was present. And I think that needs to be the next step when you see is that families want law enforcement to listen to the practices that they have against and how they go about investigating some of these cases.
Well, Shauna Toya and Pepita Redhair, thank you for allowing us to learn more about their stories. Thank you, Sean, for being here.
Of course, you're very welcome. And these are just 2 of many, many cases.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. Thank you for watching. For all the latest news, go to IndianCountryToday.com. I'm Aaliyah Chavez.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing rock. This is Indian Country Today.